A model game I really wanted to share with you was, I think, quite a famous win by Sergei Movsesian over, well, a player which has always impressed me, one of the most impressive players to me, England #1 for a considerable amount of time, his life, Mickey the Spider Adams. Now, Mickey Adams is notoriously tough to beat. He's notoriously hard to attack. He's notoriously good in the theory section, the opening section of all of his games. I know this. I've played him many times, and I've never been comfortably able to get a kind of position that I want against him. You know, I've tried lots of different ideas out, and he just sucks the energy out of the position. But here, a game played in Wei-Kan-Zi in 2009, Movsesian plays one of our suggestions, and it works a treat against him, which I think should give us a lot of confidence. If it works against Mickey, it's going to work against everyone else. It is the way I look at it. So Movsesian starts with e4, and again, these model games, we're not going to go too much into the theory. It's more about ideas. What ideas do you really want to remember, and should you be remembering in the variations that we're going to show you? What are the key points to bear in mind? Well, Mickey nearly always plays e5 because the way Mickey plays, he plays like Karpov, I'd say. And what I mean by that is Karpov said that when he plays with the white pieces, he tries to get a small advantage. When Karpov plays with the black pieces, he tries to equalize. Doesn't matter even if it's very dull, and then outplay his opponent. So Mickey, his openings are set really at not taking risks with black, but equalizing. And he's done a lot of work on finding great ways of doing that. And e5 is certainly considered black's most solid response. So we now go into our recommended bishop c4 idea. Now, the most solid bishop c5. And this is something at elite level. This is something at elite level you'll see the most. Now, knight f6 is something at elite level not quite as often seen. I think it's because it gives white the option of knight g5, but we're going for the more fun d4 options. But bishop c5 you're going to get, especially the higher up in chess you ride. And now we're castling, and after knight f6 we're playing our move d4. And this is going to take a lot of your opponents by surprise, and it's going to scare them. It's going to scare them. It's a very sound gambit to open up pieces and pressurize your opponent. Now, writing back in when this game was played in 2009, after this win, Sergei Movsesian of the white pieces here commentated, "This move is very old and has almost disappeared from modern tournament play. I decided to try it as a weapon," and we can say that his win unsurprisingly led to some resurgence of interest in this gambit, but it still remains not just a good surprise weapon, but a good weapon in mine and Richard's eyes. And it has that factor of surprising your opponent, but it also is just very dangerous, this idea. So now Mickey played the so-called main line. We get rid of that bishop. So what are we trying to do here? Well, stage one, bishop takes is the main move. Pawn takes leads into the max lang. Knight takes is a mistake. It allows knight takes e5. So bishop takes is probably what you're going to face. And the first stage is just to get rid of that bishop. So we're going to go knight takes d4. And in this position, knight takes d4 is again the main line. And here, well, our main repertoire idea is bishop g5. And this is trying to take advantage of the absence of black's bishop. So this pin is one of the main problems we are putting on black, one of the biggest issues he has. We're increasing this pin with f4. f4 is our key idea. f4 releases our rook, not just towards f6, but towards f7. f4 also is used to destabilize the knight on d4. And because we sacked this pawn, we've got freer development, black's behind development, we're opening up the position, we have the two bishops. Now, in actual fact, in the game, a different move was played rather than bishop g5, but I just want to show you, after this move, how we could transpose back into the main game. Now, against this move, black has to be very careful. We'll come on to the theory later on. That's not the point here. Let's just remember, we want to use that pin. Black would love to go bishop e7 now to break the pin. He can't. And with f4 coming, we have a simple plan. And let's just remember, if black tries to castle in these positions, well, when we play f4 and take on f6, he's going to have to take with his pawn. And his king is going to be really exposed. So he hasn't got a safe way to go with his king. So the way we're going to transpose is with d6, and now we play our important move, f4, getting our rook in the game. And now bishop e6 is a very logical move. Black's trying to exchange pieces, trying to get rid of one of our pieces, our bishop here. And now we're going to take on e5, and this is opening up the rook. Black should recapture, and now the key idea where we're going to get back into the Moussaieff Adams games is the patient and good knight to a3. And this position, again, a lot of lines in this course, it's not, you are playing very aggressively, but you can't just, checkmate your opponent in 10 moves every game. You need to have a bit of flair, obviously against Mickey Adams. That's true. But what are we doing here? And where is our comp? Well, our comp, of course, is on f6. If black ever castles, his king is going to be so weak, right? So exposed. And we can fly our bits towards the king. So his king is an issue. That is clear. Our king is castled. We can tuck it away even more. We always have the pressure on this pin, and we want to play c3, kicking this knight away. We don't necessarily want to exchange queens, of course. But why did we play knight a3 in the last move? And this knight a3 move is a key idea against bishop e6. Why? Because this is the only piece which is not really doing anything, and we want to get it to the right squares. Where are the right squares? d5, f5, and g4. Mainly, I'd say d5 and f5. And with this idea, we're going to travel it to e3, generally. Of course, this not always happens. And on e3, it has ways into d5. If that's blocked, it has ways into f5. And that's going to be very effective when the bishops are removed, when that knight on d4 is removed, and when we've doubled the pawns, because our knight is going to sit there forever, annoying black. So it's actually a very simple plan, this position. Our simple plan here is really to play c3, kick that one away in the position, play queen e2 or queen f3. We don't want to exchange queens. Let's get a rook to d1, so we make it hard for black to castle queenside. We attack his queen. We can even play rook f2, rook f1 to increase the pressure there. And we can bring our knight around either via c4 to e3, or, let's not forget, if c3 is played, we can bring it to c2 to e3. And all of our pieces have a purpose. The other issue that black has here is that where does black put his king? We know if he goes kingside, he's in trouble. Well, if he goes queenside, it's very hard for him to achieve that move. For a start, we're probably going to stop that in nearly all cases because c3 is going to allow our queen on the d file, or if we get a rook there, we're just going to stop it. So his king is in a lot of trouble. So these are the kind of ideas that I just want to show you work to dream against Mickey Adams. So the line we're going to play is d4, and then we're going to get rid of the bishop, and we're playing bishop g5. I think this is the best move order. Now, it is a model game, so one of the, I think, advantages of the videos you get when you purchase this course and the model games is we don't want to make it too theoretical heavy. That's for the theory section, and we have gone heavy there. You should check those lines out in the Move Trainer. But with these sections, I think it's incredibly important to just say the ideas. And here, Moussaieff played f4. Now, f4 is not in this course, but it has the same idea. So even if you forget your theory, but you remember the ideas, that is fine. And we haven't picked this for particular reasons, which I don't think we need to go into. We've gone for bishop g5, but it's the same kind of principle. And funnily enough, now after d6, capturing here, bishop g5, we get the same thing. Queen e7, c3, and now bishop e6, knight a3. So you can see a couple of different moves being played, queen e7 and c3, but both very logical moves. Queen e7, so the king can castle. Queen e7, so the queen can come to c5, but we've just kept up with our plan. Now, knight to c6 was played by Movsesian and actually criticized by him in the analysis. Bishop takes c4 is a move that we look at in the theory section when we actually now flick in bishop takes f6 and we take on c4. The reason we do this is because our argument is it's the right time to take on f6. You've got to work out during this when the right time to take there is. Generally, you leave it as long as you can. But then if you've got a specific reason in mind, let's say now the knight moves back somewhere, our specific reason is, well, he can't castle queenside, and our knight is going to have a very nice square on one of these two. So that we got a very easy way in. But again, we analyze this in the theory section, and you'll be convinced, I'm sure, that white is in very good shape in these positions. We're a pawn down, but our king tucks away, and when our knight gets in, it's very difficult for black. But knight c6 is, of course, again, a normal move. Now, we've got to watch out for queen c5 check. And like in a lot of lines in this course, we do not need even to rush. And king h1 is a nice move because, again, we're waiting and we're saying to black, you can't castle queenside because of our queen. If you go kingside, we're going to take there, capture there. And another thing I think very important throughout this course, no matter what variation you're in, is to really get into the mind of thinking how your opponent is going to defend and play. And I think if you do that here, well, we've really stopped that move. And there's no amazingly scary move that he can play. In the game, rook d8 was played. Natural move, but now he can't castle, which is, again, nice for us. Other options looked at the theory section. And here, well, queen b3 is a perfectly okay move, but Movsesian was in no rush with queen e2. And again, it's the ideas which are important here. This knight traveling to e3, and now it's clearer we want to pressurize f6. We don't want to go rook d1. The d file is of no use to us. We don't want to accelerate the exchange of pieces when that's only going to help our opponent. So here h6 was played, and now, of course, it's time to take on f6. Now, castles is a move that the computer wants to play, but for a human to play this, you're very scared. And we have a number of moves. We can double up on the f-file, but in actual fact, taking on f6 gives us great ongoing play. And we don't have to continue in a hurried fashion. Let's try to now get the knight to f5. So knight to c2. And now that the knight moves, I think it makes sense for black to take there and try to exchange queens. Of course, we don't exchange queens. And after knight e7, knight to e3. And this is with black playing good defensive moves because he can't really allow that knight to sit there. He's going to get mated. But even here, white has excellent compensation. We're going to go rook f3 in this position. We're going to go rook f1. And we're going to try to win that pawn. Or we might bring our rook around to h3. Our queen into h5, and it's clear to see just how great this compensation is. And in these cases, our knight might also come to g4. We're going to win that pawn on f6 with an attack. So h6 was played, and now it's time to take here, and simple chess, rook f2. Rook f3 may have run into bishop g4. Let's just increase the pressure. Rook g8. Now black can't castle. Rook to this square. If we win our pawn back, we're going to have all the normal advantages with no positional deficit. So Mickey digs in with rook g6. But his weaknesses, pawns and square, are not going away. So now the knight comes around, knight c2, and I think this is very normal. There's other little moves you can try, but this makes a lot of sense. And now king to f8. In actual fact, if I was white here, I may have even taken on e6 straight away, because if pawn takes now, we have this very strong idea of zipping over here, which would cause black lots of trouble. And if queen takes, I might even just go for this very simple idea, keeping my opponent's options at bay. Knight c2 is good, but black should probably now try bishop g4 when, of course, we have compensation. But something like king f8 looks more natural. And now our knight gets this fantastic square. Mickey now plays a very good move. He plays knight b8. This is typical Mickey, regrouping in a nice way. He wants to cover this square with c6, and he wants to bring his knight to defend. He's on the back foot. Well, let's increase the pressure. Queen h5. Our queen is much more aggressively placed there. King g7. And now that we've lured the king to that square, queen f3. And this means that the knight is going to come to this square with check. And we have a definite threat here. And why have we put the king on that square? Well, if black plays c6, we can go check. We can actually now take with a pawn. Positionally, we don't normally want to do this because we block up our lines of attack. But after rook g5, h4 shows why the king has been drawn to this square. The rook cannot retreat. So there is a threat. So black goes king h7 here. And now knight d5 was played. And this is playing for the light squares. There's a lot of tempting moves here. Knight f5 is also tempting. And you can take with a pawn and get your pawn back immediately. And in this position, of course, white would be better. But Movsesian decides that he wants more from the position. So he goes knight d5, not trying to win his pawn back straight away. And now, after the capture on this square, he takes with the e-pawn. And this is a key idea, light squares there. You can see already just how the attack is coming. e4, trying to block up that diagonal, as natural as any. Queen f4, rook d6, trying to defend. And now rook e2, and we're very calmly winning our pawn back with an ongoing initiative. Already everything's been a complete success. You don't see Mickey getting into bad positions like this, hardly ever. And after knight d7, rook takes, knight e5, bishop b3, and it's clear to see here that with the bishop kind of c2, this is, I don't know if winning's a bit too strong, but very strong. And let's play a little bit more. We'll just see how the game continued. And now the rook comes around, attacking now the bishop, the rook on g6. And here we occupy that very nice square. Mickey can't do much. And it just takes a little bit of patience. Obviously, look, you got this course. It's going to get you great positions. If your opponent defends well, which Mickey is, you still have to win the game. But this is clearly a better position. And I think we'll just stop at this point with h4, pushing that rook away. And now with rook d1, well, the rook has this way of coming to d8. And this was very quickly winning. You can't take that one because of mate. And actually in this position, well, okay, Mickey resigned because if he goes knight g6, we play here. Demolition of Mickey Adams. So I think that just gives you a flavour for some typical ideas in this d4 move. And it gives you a flavour of typical ideas in not even a very tactical sense. That win there was more manoeuvring, right? Getting this knight into the key square. And this is a good way to play against the bishop e6 ideas. And in some of these lines, as in the course, you're going to have to show some patience. You're not always going to win immediately, but if you show some patience, you're going to have a lot of fun and you're going to be the one always exerting the pressure, which is what we want from this course. Aggression, exerting the pressure. A little introduction to some of our sort of Max Lang gambit ideas that we're going to do. And this one is an old game, Chigorin versus Janowski, Paris 1900. So it's 121 years ago. But this course, when I first came up with the idea, I wanted this course to be romantic. I wanted it to be Morphy-like as much as possible, but in a modern setting with a modern twist. The point being, we can't play all the ideas that Morphy played nowadays in serious competition because they're not sound. So it required a lot of work trying to keep that spirit throughout this course, and that is something very important to me, to keep the aggressive spirit, but to update it and where possible to keep those old and brilliant ideas accessible. And one thing I also, myself and Richard have tried to do is, resurrect some of the old ideas. People forget about old variations, and they just, in some text 50 years ago, it might have been given as equal, and people just don't stop playing it because of fashion. And in some cases, we try to resurrect those ideas with modern analysis. Now, I think this game just gives a very simple sort of idea of how white should play in sort of a line you're going to certainly get. And again, with these model games, it's not always about deep variations. That's where the theory section comes in. It's about explaining what you should be thinking without memorizing, and that's what I'm going to do here. So we started off with our step plan, bishop c4, and now knight f6, and here we should play d4, because if we castle, black can take there, and this is our preferred option of playing d4. And now after pawn takes, yes, we are castling here, and the two main options, bishop c5 or knight takes e4, and here Janowski plays knight takes e4, and now we do rook e1. This has to be met with d5. We get one of our pawns back, little tactical exchange, and of course here black has a number of options. The two main moves, moving the queen a5 and h5, getting out the way. The third most popular move, queen d8. But in this game, we're concentrating on queen h5, which I think is the move you're most likely to get, because it's been suggested by Jan Gustafsson in his excellent course on e4, e5, and suggested by many players as the way black should equalize in these lines. Now, I'm not convinced black can quite equalize in all the lines that we give in the theory section. He's very close, but we're going to keep the pressure up. Now, the thing to bear in mind is, what do we capture on e4 with? This is your first important thing when you get into structure. And I'm going to repeat this time and time again. But we really have two plans. Let's even put the queen back there. We have two plans after we go knight c3. Now, the plan I think we kind of want to play is knight takes e4. Why? Because this knight can remain a very aggressive attacker. For example, the threat of jumping in with a discovered attack is great. And our knight can also come to g5 over here, which is also great. And if we don't take with a knight, our knight, our knight has to remain on this square. It's not as actively placed. So in most situations, we want to play knight takes, where we threaten some ambush. Black will naturally defend against that by putting a bishop on one of these two squares. And then our next step, if we play knight takes, is to move the bishop to g5, developing our last piece, and probably most importantly, stopping black from castling queenside. And then when we get that position in, we have a number of tactical ideas, but in a lot of positions, we can simply try to take back on d4 with our piece and retain a very small but stable advantage, because black can't castle queenside. If he castles kingside, he can get in trouble, and we have very nice centralized knights. If you can imagine one knight here and the other knight here. Now, black does have the two bishops in a lot of these lines, but he can't really use them, because the light square bishop quite often can't find anywhere good to sit. So I think idea number one in these positions is to take with a knight and play bishop g5. But this is not always the most effective idea. Why? Well, it is, I would say, when the queen goes out of the way, but when black's queen keeps in the middle, so either goes to d7 or d8, then we come to our second plan, and our second plan is just to go rook takes e4, and then just take on d4 with our knight, getting our pawn back immediately. Why is that the way we play it there? Well, especially after queen d8, we find that if we go for this plan and bishop here, it's just that black has much better concrete in the middle of the board. His queen does a much better defensive job of controlling that bishop, and the pawn, it's in the middle, it's stopping our aggressive ideas. If the queen's over here, for example, in some of those lines, it's a lot less effective because we have this extra pressure against e7, giving us more tactical options. The other thing to bear in mind after queen d8 is that when we go rook takes, and let's say knight takes here, this is main line, black can't simply take back here because the queen is now attacked. It's in a very bad place. So the queen was over on a5, black could castle, but here it's very uncomfortable already for black. So you just got to figure out, depending where your opponent's queen goes, which of those two ideas you play. So when it comes over to h5, well, now we should take with a knight here because we've separated that queen away. I would like to just remind you, the queen goes the other way. We also take with a knight. And then when black blocks with the idea of castling, we can never let black castle queenside. Well, we do, but let's try to at least stop it. And here, rather than the more common knight g5, our little idea is now bishop d2 to, again, cause as many problems to black as possible. And I would like to point out, if the queen now goes to h5, we now put our bishop on g5, and this transposes to the Chigorin-Yanovsky game we're looking at here. Now let's go back to this game. So if the queen goes here, yep, we go knight takes. Now bishop e6, bishop g5 will lead to the same thing as in the game. In this case, black played bishop e7, and nearly always when we play knight takes, we follow up with bishop g5. This is like our two-step plan. Knight here, bishop g5, finishing our development, and in a lot of cases, we can simply make some exchanges and just win the pawn back with better control of the position. Okay, we're not checkmating, we're playing aggressively as we can. If our opponent defends well, we still have an advantage. That's okay, it's not a problem. Now bishop e6 is a move which can be played, but it's certainly not the most accurate move. Now in the theory section, we look at the moves which are more annoying. And the critical line here is bishop g4, when we should take on e7, and this is often our idea. We're trying to cause problems on the e file. And now after bishop takes f3, knight takes e7, we can play queen e2. And this is one reason why we don't mind destroying our pawn structure, because knight g3 is a very strong idea, as is knight d6 and knight f6. But black can't castle. If black could castle and play one more move, our whole plan is rubbish. But with knight g3, we're winning a piece. Anyway, back to the game. Bishop e6 played. So now that you've done this plan of knight and bishop, we nearly always, when given a chance, capture on e7. Why do we do that? Well, we're very happy to see the king capture because it's stuck in the middle. And if the king captures, now we increase the pressure. And this move is another key component. But remember, only put the knight there once you've got rid of your bishop. And this is something, again, we analyze in the theory, but it's very, very nice to white. This attack, and with the black king being stuck there, ensures us an advantage. And the other point is, if the knight takes, now we can actually just play knight takes d4. We've moved that knight away from this square. Now, again, you might be thinking, well, this is a very symmetrical position. I mean, how can I be better here? Sometimes when you go for gambit lines, you have to be content with a small advantage. You're not always going to get checkmate. And just imagine how difficult and uncomfortable it is for your opponent. Your opponent would never play this opening on a regular basis if he realizes he's just going to get a worse position every time. And he has got a worse position every time because our knights, two knights in the middle, is fantastic. We also have a rook here, and this just gives us a very nice game. Now, we're also threatening to improve our pawn structure by taking on e6, and after f takes, well, we've got a permanent target to attack there. So bishop g4 was played, which is, I think, clearly the critical move here. Now, if queen takes d1, just to show you and try to, maybe you're not convinced, maybe you're thinking, I don't want an ending, just to show you that, okay, you're going to have to play endings. You can't just play openings. Sometimes you have to play endings, middle games, queenless ones. But after this, let's say that black now castles queenside. Well, here, rather than even taking on e6, giving us a slight edge, knight g5. And even without the queen, so often we do keep a very strong initiative and strong attacking chances. And this one is simply just going to win a pawn because of the threats to f7 and to e6. So, I can't give you more than a pawn, I'm afraid. So back to the game, and that's why black played bishop g4. And now gaining time is the most important thing, hence why f3 is correct. Gambit course, aggressive course. One of the things you'll find in this course, much more than mine and Richard, is a course on the Iron English. Timing is much more important. Gaining time is key. You don't want to waste time. And generally, you want to even do some moves which might structurally look a little bit bad, like we can here, if it gains you a tempo. Tempo much more important in this course. Just bear that in mind. Now, the bishop really has to go back to this square. If it goes to f5, well, knight g3 wins on the spot because of the knight and the pin. And bishop e6, well, here we could just simply take that one and now centralize our queen. And we have knight c5. We're going to win that straggler. So bishop d7 played, and now just simple chess. Queen d2. And this is just simple and good. In actual fact, even knight b3, this rather peculiar move, could be stronger because we're stopping black from castling because of the threat there. And if he castles queenside, we have the very attractive move knight d6 and rook e7. Again, black's pawn structure is ruined with our queen coming to the center. Very nice advantage. But after queen d2, again, you don't always have to play extravagantly. Simple is often good. Simple, solid moves. Let's say black castles, otherwise we'll just bring in another one in. And now the great Russian player Chigorin now plays knight f6 check. And this forces his structure, black structure, to be ruined. And after rook d8, just queen c3, getting the queen out of the way, starting to target these pawns. The opening has been a complete success in the position. Now, c6 was played, normal move. Queen g5, more accurate here. And one thing I would suggest you do, and you'll find this a lot, you can get your knight to this square often in this variation. And one thing that's very useful to play, I mean, taking on c7 allows bishop h3. This is something to avoid. We're losing here. But bishop h3 on its own is not a particularly scary threat. And here, I like the move b4 because I want to keep my knight here and I don't want c5 to occur. And if bishop h3 here, well, g3 is absolutely fine. And we've even can play king f2. There's no threats here. We've got a better ending, better middle game, better everything. But after c6, let's see what happened. And now a very clever move, a powerful retreat, knight e2. These guys could still play amazing chess hundreds of years ago, right? Queen g5, guarding the pawn, and now f4. And this restricts the queen even more. And again, another point, another reason we picked this game is you might be worried that you've got the knight versus the bishop, but this bishop can often just be a very bad piece. Queen h6, knight g3, and after rook e8, let's just remind you that if you take on f4, knight h5 is incredibly strong. Our knight is very good. Just simply taking on this square and queen and rook f1, stopping the queen from moving out. Small advantage. Now the queen goes off this one, centralization. Bishop g4, and now rook d6, continuing to press those weaknesses. And black is in a lot of trouble, has been for a while. He now played rook e6, but after this check, f5 was the crippling finish. And the point being, bishop f5 now gets hit by a winning move. Can you see it? I'm not even going to tell you, actually. After white's next move, black resigned. pause if you need to. So again, I think a fascinating and brilliant game there, and very nicely played by Chigorin, and some little key points to remember in this variation. And I don't think I need to go over them again. This is just trying to get you in the right way of thinking before we analyze the long variations. What should you be looking out for in this particular line? And what I mean by that is really when we get this position after knight c3. This is a mainline position. What are you trying to remember, even if you forget the theoretical moves?